Hey, I started Church Project 15 years ago, but actually Church Project started well before then. I grew up in Tyler, Texas, small town East Texas. Anybody know where that is in here? Oh, we have some Texas people in here. All right, good. So that's where I grew up, and I grew up in an old school, like fundamental Southern Baptist church, man. And like I evangelized my Methodist friends, I thought anybody who wasn't hardcore Southern Baptist like me was on their way on a fast train to hell. And so I just was I didn't really understand the gospel. I understood the gospel as it applied to people just like me. But the Spirit of God is good and started sanctifying me and teaching me and growing me in my faith and my understanding of salvation. And I started college pre-med. I was in some programs in high school. I got to work with doctors, like here's a brain, here's a neurosurgeon, here's me. It was pretty cool, these programs I was in, and I thought maybe I'll use my life to serve the Lord, like as a medical missionary somehow, or my grandparents owned businesses in the medical industry all throughout Tyler and all around East Texas and beyond, and I thought maybe I'll lead that and do that. And the day after I graduated high school, I started working in my home church, like as an intern. And then God started using these years of working in churches through college. I would work as a youth pastor, because I love Jesus in his church. I just never thought I'd be a pastor because I didn't like the way I looked in a suit, and I didn't have white hair, and, I didn't want to wear a choir robe when I baptized people. All these things that just didn't work for me. And so I thought, I didn't see a real fit there. But God started clarifying his call for my life. And as he did that, I started getting really frustrated because I'm like, I don't fit there, and I don't really like a lot of the church. I feel called to it. So I'll never forget this prayer. I was sitting in my truck in a college apartment complex in East Texas, and I prayed this prayer. I said, God, if you're calling me to be a part of your local church, let me be a part of what you originally intended for it to be. And that prayer, I think, began a journey for me that I'm still on. I'm 51. I prayed that prayer probably when I was 22, 23. And I started seeking out what the church was originally intended to be. So now, fast forward, I've done doctoral work in the early church. I've been to around 40 countries studying the church. Studied church history a whole lot. Just had a conversation with Bill Hull on my podcast about church history and Zwingli and what his thoughts, about the ecclesia, the church, and how Zwingli more than Luther or Calvin, got rid of the priesthood. And so we're just, I just was enamored with this and what did Jesus originally intend for his church to be. And then so I started working in churches after college. I just kept working in churches. Went to one church, went to another church, went to another church. And I was frustrated at every church, and they were frustrated with me. And, I just was like, this isn't it. And I got to a point to where I realized I don't even need to be a Christian to do a lot of the work I'm doing in the church, much less be called to be a pastor. I mean, what I'm doing, I'm running programs and budgets and all these things, and I was so frustrated. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I found myself in succession to take over a very large church whenever the lead pastor would retire or die or quit or whatever would happen. And I just said, this isn't it for me. I can't do this with my life. So I left with 40 people. By the time we planted Church Project, I knew 4 or 5 of them. We had no money, no place, no people, no name. Church Project's not our name. It's just a placeholder until we get a name. So anyway, maybe one day we'll get a name. Probably not. People would make fun of it. They'd be like, what's the name Church Project? I'm like, it's not our name. And they're like, well, what is it? What is your name? And I said, well, what was the name of the church in Jerusalem? And they're like, I don't know. And I would say, well, then it doesn't matter, And so I'm like, I just don't want a name. And I was just rebelling against everything because I was so frustrated with the church. But it's not good to rebel if you don't have anything to run to, And so we were running from things. And so sort of a tagline in my life, even the name of my podcast, which isn't a great podcast, it's just the name of it, is Rethink and Return. Like we were rethinking, but everybody's rethinking. So where are we going in our rethinking? We need to rethink by returning to what Jesus originally intended the church to be. And so I have found a lot of rethinkers and a lot of rebels, but they don't know where they're going. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to dig deep into the Word and see it. And so what I want to do is tell you just one place that helped me see how we've built this thing called Church Project and how every other church project is built everywhere. I want to help you see in Scripture why and how we built it. And I want to help us all form a little bit more what's called our ecclesiology, which would be the doctrine of the church. And, the PhD head of our doctoral program at Church Seminary said this one time. He wrote a paper on this. He said, I think that most pastors do not have a refined ecclesiology. And I agree with that. I mean, we have all this beautiful doctrine that we carry to the church, doctrine of sin and salvation and creation and a return of Christ. We take all this beautiful doctrine, and the vessel by which we carry it is also a doctrinal vessel, and the vessel by which we carry doctrine to the church is ecclesiology. It's the doctrine of the church. And for many of us, that is just, has a lot of cracks in it. And so we need to really form our doctrine of the church. And so let me take you to a place. Titus chapter 1, verse 5. You can look there on your own. If not, I'll quote it to you. You can write it down. You can not, whatever you want to do. But Paul said this to Titus. I'll let you turn there if you are choosing to. Titus chapter 1. And what I see here, I now see everywhere in every church that was ever planted in the New Testament. Titus chapter 1, verse 5. Paul told Titus this. The reason I left you in Crete, full stop, for any of us leading in a church, we have to stop there and go, oh, this is one of the pastoral letters. And we have the Apostle Paul, church planter extraordinaire, defender of the gospel of Jesus Christ, telling people why you're a pastor and why there is a church. So, I read the pastoral letters, hundreds of times in my life now. But I had read them many years and didn't think to stop here and just go, oh, he's about to tell us why there are even pastors and why there's a church. Because the Apostle Paul, shared the gospel here in Crete, this mountainous island. He shared the gospel all over Crete, and then he left, because that's what he did, and he sent Titus there to plant the church. Paul planted the gospel, and now he wants Titus to plant the church. And this is what he said: the reason I left you in Crete, here's the reason you're a pastor, here's the reason we're going to have a church, and here's the way. So he said, the reason I left you in Crete was what? Number one, straighten out what's unfinished. Appoint elders in every town as I directed you. And then he lists the qualities of elders. And then Titus chapter 2, verse 1, teach what is in accord with sound doctrine. So three things: straighten out what's unfinished, appoint elders in every town as I directed you, and teach sound doctrine to these elders. So that's what's happening. So here's what the elders look like, here's what the leaders look like, but these are the three commands that he's telling Titus so far. So number one, straighten out what's unfinished. I think my job is to look at our church and go, what is unfinished? What's not straight? What's not healthy? What's not working well? What's not effective? What's not making disciples? I think that's my primary job, to look at this place and see what's wrong. And other people look at this place and they see what's right. I look at this place and I see what's wrong. My job is to straighten out what's unfinished. So other people may be like, that's fine. And my least favorite word in the English vocabulary is fine. I can't stand the word fine. It needs to be great. It needs to be healthy. It needs to be effective, Not a show, we'll talk about that later, but healthy. So Paul said, Titus, I need you to straighten out what's unfinished. Like, there are some things, Titus, that I'm going to send you to here that aren't finished. It's just not great yet. It's not healthy yet. It's not done. So straighten out what's unfinished, but then look at this. You can build an ecclesiology off of this. And a hermeneutical principle that we all know is that you use Scripture to interpret Scripture, and we've seen denominations and bad doctrine where people build a doctrine off of a verse. But you can do that if there are also a lot of other verses and a lot of other texts that prove it. And so you can build a doctrine off this verse, and you'll prove it in every other instance in the church. So the reason I left you in Crete, straighten out what's unfinished, appoint elders in every town. You can build an ecclesiology off of this phrase. Why is this? Well, you have Paul, this guy up here, telling Titus, this guy here, that Paul has some authority. Can we use that word? The Bible does, tells people in the church, submit to the authority of your leaders. We have Paul, who, whatever you want to call him, maybe there's no org chart, but Titus goes where Paul tells him. And Titus is being told by Paul to tell other people what to do. And so Paul is telling Titus to tell other people something. And this is what he tells Titus: appoint elders in every town. Now, people quibble over the word. What does the word elder mean versus pastor versus bishop versus overseers? And so we'll talk about that, and some of you will ask questions about it, and I'll let you ask your question, and then I'll let you see how you sound when you ask your question, and that'll help me answer your question. Because, what are we talking about here? But Paul, what is he? Is he an apostle? And in our church now, would he be a bishop? Like I've asked our elders, I'm like, who are the overseers in our church? And they're like, And I'm like, is that us? And then who are the elders in the church? Is that our house church pastors? And then I'm like, who's the bishop? Anyone? Is there one? Does that want to be me? Only my wife can call me bishop right now. Do I want anybody else to? And so elders, pastors, bishops, overseers. So Paul's telling Titus, what's he telling him? Appoint elders in every town. And what are they supposed to do? Well, we list the qualifications here, but this is what Paul is telling Titus. He's telling Titus, I do not want you to go pastor this island of Crete. I don't want you to do that. That's not for you to do. I don't want you, Titus, to feel the responsibility to go to everyone around the island of Crete and be their pastor. I mean, what kind of pressure would that be? Can you imagine the pressure on a person to be the pastor of a large group of people? I mean, what kind of pressure would that be? Maybe the kind of pressure that's happening in every church everywhere in the United States for so many years, and that's why pastors are crashing and burning and leaving the ministry at a historical rate. Maybe that's the pressure that Paul wanted Titus to avoid feeling. And so he didn't tell Titus, I want you to go pastor all these people. And he didn't say, Titus, I want you to set up a place and have all these people come to you. That wasn't his plan either. Hey, Titus, pick a town, any town. Pick your favorite town on the island of Crete. Probably, Titus, you'd want to be like close to the beach, So on your day off, you just lay out, have them bring you some hummus and dates, and, that's what'll happen. No, I don't want you to build a place and all the people come to it. And I don't want you actually going to all those people. This is what he said. Paul told Titus, the reason why I left you here was to appoint a person in every place to pastor those people there. And so a pastor for all the people in their place. I mean, that's pretty cool. Now, when I read that, I'm like, that feels different to me. It feels different than what I've experienced. It feels different than what I've been leading. It feels different than anything I've ever seen. Like a pastor for all the people in the place where they live, rather than the lead pastor pastoring all the people or all the people coming to this place. No, a pastor for all the people wherever they live. So that's what we've done here at Church Project. Now, this is what I see here, and this is like usually if people write things down, these are the three things they write down. And so I'll give you three things to write down, and they start with D, just so I can remember them, but maybe they'll help you too. I see these three, what I call eDNA, ecclesiological DNA elements. I see them in every church in the Bible now. And I see them all throughout church history. And it's just DNA. Jesus said, I will build my church. And I believe that we have a real problem with what I call ecclesiological relativity. Would you take any doctrine, and go, whatever you believe about that is fine? Tell me a doctrine that you would say, hey, I believe this, but whatever you want to believe about it is fine. Whatever you want to believe about the virgin birth, that's fine. Whatever you want to believe about original sin, that's fine. Whatever you want to believe about salvation alone, by grace alone, through faith alone, that's fine. Would you take any doctrine? Would you take any one of your doctrines and say, that's fine? Now, maybe, the return to Christ doctrines we would, A-trib, P-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. I mean, that's fine. Whatever you want to believe about that is fine, because none of us are really sure exactly, except you, everybody else. So, but I mean, when it comes to our ecclesiology, we have a doctrine of relativity that says, hey, as long as you say Jesus and church, it's fine. Do whatever you want to do. I don't think that's true. I think Jesus said, I'll build my church, and I think he showed us through Scripture what it looked like. And now I can't unsee it. And here's three things that I see here. Number one, I see the first D of the eDNA, the ecclesiological DNA, is decentralized from primary place and primary priest. Decentralized from primary place and primary priest. So let's go back to the Old Testament real quick, the Old Covenant. If you wanted sacred stuff to happen, you went to a sacred place with sacred people, right? You had the priest. Then Jesus comes on the scene. He dies and rises again. And then we're being taught, you're a royal priesthood. It would have blown their minds to hear that. I'm part of the priesthood? No. No, there's no more sacred priesthood, right? You're a royal priesthood. So one day in this room, this family from Venezuela had migrated to the Houston area and somehow got connected to our church, spoke very little English, but they came here. And they became a follower of Jesus. We have a phrase in our church, everyone an evangelist. We teach everyone in our church what the gospel is and how to share it. And so these people shared the gospel with these people. And so this Venezuelan family in our church, they came to Christ, and we have a monthly, nightly prayer gathering here. And the father comes to me, and we're helping people understand what communion is and to go take communion. And the man comes to me and he says, what do I do? And I knew that he just became a believer. And I said, this is what the elements mean. This is what Jesus was saying. Go here and take communion. And he said, well, do you do that for me? And I said, no. I said, you do that for you and your family. And so this man went to one of our boxes, around the table where communion is, and he's weeping. I'm weeping. He leads his family in communion, And when we had another baptism this past Sunday in our foyer, it was awesome. And there are just house church pastors or parents or baptizing people in the baptismal pool. I mean, Paul is helping flesh out this idea that there's no more sacred priest and there's no more sacred place, right? I mean, we still have people and we still have places, but there's no more sacred place. And so for them to decentralize, like Jesus said this, wherever 2 or 3 people are gathered, I'll be with you. I don't think Jesus was constituting a church of 2 or 3 people. I'm not saying that 2 or 3 people can't make up a church, but he wasn't saying that if you're 2 or 3 Christians, you're a church. He said wherever, and we skip over that word, but wherever you gather. Well, that would have been a wild thing. Like, you're a priesthood of the believer? What? Wherever you gather? What do you mean? Not the temple, not the synagogue, not the tabernacle anymore? I don't have to go to a sacred place with a sacred priest anymore? No, now this is decentralized from a sacred place and a sacred priest. That was revolutionary, which, by the way, the gospel's revolutionary, which, by the way, Jesus came to revolutionize it, and we have moved back to old covenant practices, right? So, this is what happened. The first one is decentralized from primary place and primary priest. The next one is distributed pastoral leadership. The next D, distributed pastoral leadership. We're going to distribute the pastoral leadership. We're decentralized away from a place, Titus, and away from you. It's not all about you. But here's the next thing you're going to do. You're going to distribute pastoral leadership. Why? Because you're not going to be there with those people. You're not going to be with them. When their baby gets sick, you're not going to be with them. When their marriage falls apart, you're not going to be with them. When they lose their job, you're not going to be with them. When they're trying to explain the gospel to their friend and they don't know what to say because they're a new believer, you're not going to be with them. You're not the guy. You have to distribute pastoral leadership. So these are the kind of people you have to raise up, Titus. But you need to distribute pastoral leadership. You're not going to be their pastor. You're going to pastor the pastors. Your job is to go appoint these people who are going to pastor them. You'll appoint these people. You'll teach these people sound doctrine. That's what you're going to do. But you're not going to be here for all these people. You know what we've done, though, right? I mean, I grew up in it. I built it. I helped do a great job at building this approach for many years in many places where, hey, you need a pastor? We got you. We're paying some great people to be your pastor. And we'll put on some great programs for you. And you need a pastor? Make an appointment. We'll do our best to meet with you. I mean, this thing does not scale at all. It's not sustainable at all. And it's not effective at all. But the way that Paul was telling Titus to do this is completely scalable, super simple. And I'll tell you why I know that, because we're doing it here. I mean, you could go to our website, you can go to our wall outside, you can find house churches all over our city, and they're dentists and doctors and attorneys and teachers and firemen. I mean, businessmen, engineers. They're pastoring people. They're doing benevolence. All benevolence happens in a house church. They're doing funerals. They never have before. We teach them how. They do weddings. So this one couple came to our church when our church was younger and smaller, and I introduced them to each other. I'm like, hey, have you met so-and-so? The guy's like, no. And I ask her, hey, can I introduce you to a guy? She's like, yes. So I introduced them. And, now they're making babies together. And who gets the credit for that? Not me, because I introduced them to each other, and they end up going to house church together as a dating couple. The house church pastor and his wife start mentoring them, like premarital kind of mentoring. And then it's time for them to get married. And the father of the girl, they're wealthy, own their own plane, kind of wealthy. And they're getting married. And I'm like, I hear they get engaged. And I'm like, this is cool. And they're going to have a destination wedding. And I'm like, cool. Where am I going to be going? And maybe on his private jet, where am I going to be going? And I get an invitation in the mail to the wedding, and I find out that they're fireman house church pastors doing their wedding. And the dad's flying he and his wife out days before to enjoy time at this destination place. And I'm like, I get an invitation to your wedding? I'm not doing your wedding? But I mean, in reality, their house church pastor is the one who poured into their life and knows them. Not long after Church Project started, we were about to sit down at home and have dinner with the family, and my wife says, hey, I just saw on Facebook that so-and-so's baby got in something bad happened. They rushed him to the ER. And I'm like, oh. So I'm like, sorry, kids, can't be at dinner with you. I need to go up there. Great family in our church. And so this is right after Church Project started. And so I'm like, I got to care for these people. So I rush up to the hospital. I go up to the desk. And in Texas, if you're clergy, right, I mean, you have special privileges to go behind the scenes. There is a big public official in our community that something bad happened. And I mean, Texas Rangers were there everywhere, and they wouldn't let even family in, but they let me in. They let a pastor in. And so I go up to the hospital for this little baby. I go up to the desk, and I'm like, I'm here to see so-and-so. And the receptionist lady said, are you family? And I said, no, I'm their pastor. And she said, you're not their pastor. Their pastor's already back there. I'm like, what? She said, you can go in the waiting room. And I went in the waiting room, and all their house church was already there. And the house church pastor's already back there. Because these people are on a text string together, and they're super connected. We have distributed pastoral leadership, and it's awesome. We have people buying people cars, paying people's mortgages, doing all kinds of stuff for people, and we don't know about it. We hear stories later. Decentralized, away from primary place, primary priest. Second, distributed pastoral leadership. Third, diverse discipleship communities. Diverse discipleship communities. I mean, diversity. Why is that important? Well, let's think about this. Let's think about this little town in Crete here. Appoint elders in every town as I directed you. Let's think about the little town in Crete. All right, who lives in that town? At most, there's one house church in this town. Some people right now are going to be traveling from the neighboring town to come to this town to go to this house church that Titus appointed the elder of because Paul told him to. And so this house church, who lives there? Who lives by this house church? Married people? Yeah. Married people live by that house church. Single people? Yeah. Single people live. Down the street, do single people live down there? Yeah. Married people? Yeah. Rich people live there? Yeah, rich people live in this little bitty town. Poor people live in this town? Yeah. Somebody's the poorest in every town. Right? White people, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, Indian people live there? Yeah. Probably in this town, people of different color skin, different customs. Some people grew up and their parents maybe were Jews and they got taught things of God. Do they live there? Yeah. Do Greeks live there or Romans who never heard about the one true God and they didn't grow up hearing about any of this? Yeah. Probably down the street, somebody like that. So where do they go? Do they go to I'm the former Greek God group? You know, do you go there? Do you go to your widows group? No. They're all coming together with a pastor over them, older, younger, rich, poor, different color skin, different places socioeconomically, different places of spiritual maturity. I mean, diversity is complex, and it is the way that God wants to sanctify people. I mean, Paul told the church of Ephesus, have the spiritual mature help the less spiritual mature. Where is that happening in a church? Through your programs? Through your groups? No. He told Timothy, have the older people teach the younger people. Where's that happening? Through a parachurch program where you set up mentors? How's that going? I've been a part of churches that did that. It was great for the small percentage of people who did it. You know, he told the Corinthians, have the rich people and the poor people live in harmony, like the rich people holding back their good wine from the poor people's wine. And if you're a wine drinker, you know the difference. And you know that people who are drinking poor box wine are going to like a bottle of Cambus. Like, you know, so the rich people were holding back their wine for the poor people. Paul's like, that's not how rich and poor live together, not in the church. And so the diverse discipleship communities. If you look at the church in America, there are actually very few. I mean, we've looked. We talk with Discipleship.org about it. We talk with Exponential about it. We're looking. There are very few churches that take these three eDNA elements and build a church off of it. So that's what we went after. That's what we've been doing, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'll repeat it, and then I'm going to let you ask questions. Decentralized from primary place and priest, distributed pastoral leadership, and diverse discipleship communities. All right, let's talk. I'll let you ask questions. We'll have a conversation together in a big room that seats 2,000 chairs. It'll be really natural. It'll be really great. So yell it out. Yes, I see your hand in the back. Please, thank you. We will talk deeply about that next session. Yeah, we have 4 sessions for those of you who can endure it. I have a sense that it'll be like, you know, we'll all sit right here in a little bit. But yeah, we're going to get deep into how do we select house church pastors? How do we train them? We say every pastor needs a pastor. We pastor our house church pastors so well. We've gotten good at that. We weren't always. How we select them, how we train them. Yeah, there's a whole process for that. Just like Paul told Titus, here's all the qualifications for it. Yeah, and if you guys are in the booth and you can turn lights up, can we turn lights up a little bit more? Does anybody know how to do that? Our normal people are not in there, but people are trying to read stuff. Thanks, Wes. So we'll answer that exhaustively later, Dave. Thank you. Yes? I don't know. We have 4 sessions together. We have 3 sessions on this, and then the last session is about, space and rethinking gatherings and all of that, this stuff. So it's either in track session 2 or 3. I can help you know in a little bit. Yes?
So my question has to do with this building. What is the role of this building?
It keeps the rain off. It keeps the rain off of us.
I was asking the role of this building. If all the ministry is decentralized, what would you do with this space? It's huge.
Yeah.
What's...
Well, it's huge because they have a lot of people. And so this gets into a question of, I spend a lot of time in the house church world and in the microchurch world, and people are against space. I get it. Really what I think people are against is a common gathering. And so if you believe that that gathering together is a beautiful thing, and we do. We are a church of house churches, but we love the Sunday gathering. Let me help you all with this. People believe that centralization happens because of a Sunday gathering. Centralization is not because of a Sunday gathering. Centralization is this: who does your pastoring? Who does your discipling? Who does your meeting of needs? Like, who does your pastoring and who does your discipling? Here's most churches, their pastoring happens through their staff and their discipling happens through programs. I mean, that's centralization. Sunday gathering is not central. We'll have thousands of people here on a Sunday. We have no phone number. We have no foyer. We have no receptionist here. I don't need a building. Why have a building? We'll talk about that in the last session too, but I do need a space to gather. So I'd be glad. When we first started Church Project, I never thought I'd need a building this big, and I didn't. We had 40 people. I mean, I tried to rent a gym at a place called Bear Branch Community Center. I tried to rent the Montgomery County Library on the waterway. I had 12 places I tried to rent. I just needed a place to gather on Sunday. So most of the time when people ask about a building, what they're really saying is, should we gather on Sundays or not? But if you're going to gather, you need a place to gather. And so we just ended up renting a place because we couldn't find any other place. And then what we do with our building, we share it. Our footprint of use in this place is 8%. I think it's dumb for people to buy a building. Don't buy a building. Don't buy a building unless you're going to share it with ministries in your city, like we're doing right now, and you're going to steward it. Like we rent our building out and it pays for itself. So, but then the question really gets to, should you have Sunday gatherings or not? And we got church projects all over the nation that they're borrowing places, renting places on Sunday morning. You just need a place to gather on Sunday morning. So for us, it just worked out that we could buy a place. So we tell our church, we borrow this building on Sundays and we share it with our city throughout the rest of the week, and we steward it by renting it out, and it pays for itself. So we don't have Noah's Ark on the wall, and because of that, we have a company that'll rent our building and give us $75,000 for 3 days because it's cheaper than the Marriott down the street, and it's the next largest space, and we don't have pews and graded floors, and it's not an ideal place to do church, but it's an ideal place to tear all this down and set up for a massive gala, So anyway, we'll talk a lot about that, but this building is just, the question really becomes, do you believe that we should gather together or not? And if you don't believe you should gather together, then don't worry about it. If you believe that house churches can come together on Sunday and still be really decentralized, and we've proven that you can, well, then you need a place to do it. You don't need to own a building for it. We do.
Are Sundays the only days you gather together?
That's it, yeah. There's no way. Nobody knows where our offices are here. There's no phone number. Nobody can get to me. You go to our website. My name's not on our website. None of our staff is. My name's not on the sign. We started at the very beginning with 40 people, and I said, look, if we put my name on a sign, we need to put everybody's name on the sign. Because the Apostle Paul said, I'm the least important person in the body. Yet we're putting the least important person's name on a sign. I go to places and I speak to groups of pastors, thousands, and I tell them, I'm like, all you guys got a picture of you and your wife on a billboard. I tell them, my wife is prettier than your wife. If anybody should have a billboard with them and their wife, it should be me. But you should take a picture of you and your wife down because the church is not about you. Take your name off the sign, get your name off the billboard. So we've gone so far, our name's off the website. You can't call Church Project today if you want to. You want to get connected to Church Project? You can show up on a Sunday, but other than that, we're getting you to a house church. You can get on our website and find a house church by where you live. You can get on our website and, well, I think that's all you can do, actually. Read a little bit about us and go to a house church. That's it. You need a pastor this week? Nah, go to a house church. I mean, so it's awesome. Good. Other questions? Yes. Easy. We have a lot of accountability. He said, how do you prevent segregation when you're trying to assimilate? It's really easy. We have a ton of unity. In 15 years, we've only had one house church go rogue, and they all repented and came back. I mean, you read the book of Numbers, the word begat is all throughout it. So-and-so begat so-and-so, begat so-and-so. And every one of our house churches begat another house church. Every house church pastor begat another house church. So, I mean, the most important house churches were the first two. I selected them. I was Paul, or I was Titus, or I was whoever, but I appointed two house church pastors to pastor people, one on the east side of I-45, one on the west side of I-45. I met with each one of those guys every week individually, and I met with them together corporately, and then we multiplied, and I kept doing the same thing myself till we had about 15 house churches. Sunday gatherings protect house church. We have a common Sunday gathering, and then in house church, we are wrestling through the same passage of Scripture together. So there's a church I worked at, a very large church, and they had a lot of groups. And I remember I got to this church and I just worked here for a while and I just looked around and wanted to learn and, waited a month or two to ask some questions. But I remember I had lunch with the lead pastor of this church and I said, who determines what small group leaders teach? And he said, well, they do. I said, so they can teach whatever they want? He said, yeah. I said, well, who's making sure that what they're teaching is doctrinally sound? He's like, we don't know. And I said, and I started asking other questions about that. And I said, so you're telling me that you preach on Sunday, but we're wanting everybody to live in community and be discipled there, because there's no other place in that church that I work for all these people to be discipled other than small groups. And I'm like, but we don't know what they're being taught, and you have no plan. I believe a proper sermon creates tension between earth and heaven. The podcast I just did with Bill Hull a few minutes ago, Bill Hull said, the sermon, the pulpit, is a place where you create the reality. Like, here's the reality. Here's what heaven says. And house church is the place where we wrestle it out down here on earth. And that's a place where people are able to say, I'm not so sure that I understand this. Or I'm not so sure I believe it. Or I'm not choosing to live this way. Well, I grew up in church Sunday morning, 2 things. Sunday evening, 2 things. Tuesday night Bible study, Wednesday night church. I went to all of it, so I wanted to make sure I was going to go to heaven. So I did it all. I learned it all, but I never, ever had a place where I could go, what does this mean? And nobody was really holding me accountable. There's no community of people holding me accountable to know if I was living in that or not. So we keep unity across all house churches because we're all walking through the same place in Scripture together. So let's just say we hear a sermon from this stage on Sunday morning. We're walking through the book of Galatians, chapter 4 this past week, starting in verse 1. We're walking slowly through Scripture together. People from all different house churches are in this room, both gatherings, and then they go back to their house churches this week. And some house church pastor starts to say something doctrinally different than what we said on Sunday morning. Well, people in the house church would go, whoa, I'm hearing something really different doctrinally than what I heard today. So Sunday gathering protects doctrine in house churches. It gives us an opportunity to continue developing people, which, by the way, we do a lot of development with our house church pastors, way beyond Sunday, of course. Every house church pastor is being pastored regularly, 2 times a month by a pastor. So we have a lot of unity. I mean, we'll get into some of those mechanics later, as I was telling Dr. Mabry a little bit ago. But yeah, we have a lot of unity, because we're all walking together at the same place. And I like to say we have alignment based upon our agreements. And we have accountability to our agreements. So we have a lot of alignment based upon our original agreements. We have all agreed together what this means. Not only what your role is and your responsibility is, but what your accountability is. So we have a lot of alignment early on across all house churches. I'll give you a little example. When COVID came, everybody remembers that. It was no fun for anybody. I think some people like to say that their experience was worse than others, and I would tell you that mine was worse than yours. But it was bad for all of us, right? Everybody thinks theirs was the worst. So we got COVID going on, and people are fighting about, race and politics and COVID and everything. And so nobody knew what was going to happen. And so when this first started, our elders got together and we're like, we stopped meeting later than most people and restarted earlier than most, even in our community. But who knew what was right and wrong? And, we had people telling us, if you do this, we're going to leave. If you do this, we're going to leave. It was a horrible experience. So our elders, we just finally got together and prayed. And then we said, this is what we're going to ask our house churches to do. So we collectively told our house churches, this is what we'd like for you to do. And we told them, I found out, because we're on all of their social media threads. They all have a Facebook page. They all have a group me. They have other things. We found out that one of our house church pastors said, hey, I know our elders sent this message out, but we're going to do this as a house church. And so somebody told me, and they were going to take care of it. And I said, no, please let me have this phone call. And so I called this guy up, and I said, hey, man. He said, hey, what's going on? I said, congratulations. He said, for what? I said, congratulations, I've heard you're starting your own church. And he said, what? I said, I hear that you're starting your own church. And he said, I'm not starting my own church. I said, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that the elders of Church Project, to who you're accountable, and primarily that's me, but collectively we made this decision, and we told all of you, and you decided to remove yourself from our leadership and do something on your own. I said, so I'm assuming that you're starting your own church because you're no longer under the umbrella of authority of this church. And I said, hey, man, we love you. We're going to pray for you. We're going to support you. We're going to take your name off our website. Nobody's going to find you from our map anymore. You're not going to have a pastor to pastor you anymore. We're not going to resource you like you do. You won't be in our family anymore, but we'll see you in heaven. And we're going to say hi to you at the grocery store. We love you. We're not against you. Just congratulations. He said, Shep, I got it. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I'll get back in line under the elders. I said, great, thanks, have a great day. Wear your mask. I mean, that's how we do it here. We're all aligned. And so, did that help answer your question a little bit? It didn't answer your question at all? Well, I'm going to blame it on your question. No, it's on me. What's going on? Yeah. Yeah.
But not, and as we invite other people of other nationalities, other colors, it's almost like there is a suspicion of why are you inviting us and all of that. So we're trying to work.
Yeah, I get it.
And yet, the people who are responding to us look a lot like.
Yeah, I get that. Natural human tendency. That's the natural human tendency. But I like to say this, when you gather geographically, you force diversity. So let me tell you where I have found that, and now I've just, somehow stepped into the world of house church and microchurch stuff everywhere, and we're a hybrid, we're sort of both. But this is what I find when I see that problem, it's generally because one, you have isolated independent house churches and it's not a group of house churches, or the people, if you are a group of house churches, your people aren't missional, they're not evangelistic, it's not coming from I just say we don't have that problem here. I don't know exactly why you have the problem you're having. I love that that's a problem for you, frankly. I love that you don't like that. I think it's beautiful. I'll tell you that we don't have that problem, and we don't have that problem because our people, we've taught them that the gospel's for everyone, and they are sharing the gospel wherever they go. And frankly, people get on our Church Project app or our map on our website, and they find the house church closest to them, and there's no other identifier. And so people will show up. A Hispanic person will show up at a house church and may be the only Hispanic person there, or a black person may, or a white person may go, and it may be a predominantly Hispanic house church. And so you just go to the house church closest to you, and let's answer more one-on-one, because I want to make sure, I want to walk with you through that. I just know we don't have that problem. I can maybe tell you some things that we're doing that you can adopt to help you. I love that you hate that, and you don't want to have that problem. But we don't have that problem because when we gather geographically, we force diversity, and people, see if you can intuit a little bit from just looking at the way we present it, if maybe some of the things we're doing can help you accomplish it. But I'll be glad one-on-one to talk to you more about that too. Where do you live? Yeah. Well, I live in the Woodlands, Texas, and we got a lot of problems here that we're trying to break. The gospel can break down all of these strongholds. I really believe it. And the socioeconomic stronghold is the biggest stronghold, I think. I mean, I got great friends who highly educated, sharp, eloquent people of different colors of skin. I have more in common with them than I do with a poor white person who, lives a totally different lifestyle than me. So I think the socioeconomic barrier we have found is the hardest barrier to overcome. We have rich people sitting in living rooms with poor people. I will tell you, I do not gauge the diversity of our church on how different we look on a Sunday morning. I gauge it on how we look in a living room. And so, are you a diverse church? Because you got people of different color skin singing songs on Sunday? No. Take me to your living rooms and show me there if you got rich and poor people together, old and young people together, black, brown, Asian, Indian, white together. Take me to a living room and show me there. And we're seeing that happen a little bit. Okay, you had a question right here?
Yeah, you said, starting with Paul told Titus, straighten out what's unfinished. So what's unfinished here?
Oh, well, he said, Paul told Titus, straighten out what's unfinished here. And by the way, I want to leave some gold for you guys, for session 2. I don't want to be alone in it. So I want to make sure I don't throw it all here right now. But where do I start? We've just reapproached our one-on-one discipleship stuff. It was fine, which I hate that word fine. So we've reapproached it, and I think it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be great yet, but it was our next step. So we've just reapproached that. In a few weeks, we'll have an entire Sunday morning that we teach everybody what we mean by this now, and our next steps in it. We have people here who choose to not be a part of a house church community, but then they have expectations of being pastored like they were at another place. And so we give them room to do that, but we don't bow the knee to that. We don't bend at all. We have no other way to help you other than through house church. So we have just decided that's it. We don't have house church and something. It's just that. So we have people who won't buy into it yet. The bigger you get, the easier it is for people to hide. So we are figuring out ways to put the light on these people and go, hey, not cool. That's not what we're about. We don't want that for you. Life actually puts the light on them, though, because life happens to everybody. And when life happens and they don't have a house church community, what we have started doing now is we put them, we're not going to meet your need through some central pastoring staff. We're going to get you connected to the house church closest to you. Want our help? Your wife got diagnosed with cancer and you got 3 young kids and you're alone and you need help. There's a house church by you that will love you very well through this process. Can I connect you to them? And when people don't want it, I let them walk away sad, And so, giving, we are radically generous. We're planting a ton of churches. We support a lot of ministries. We have a saying here, simplicity for the sake of generosity. Yet with all of our generosity and all of our simplicity, we have, you can use that, simplicity for the sake of generosity. If I don't tell you to, you will anyway. And so it's great. There are people who aren't giving. God has not mastered greed in their life through, they say generosity is the antidote to greed. And so God is not the master of their wallet. As Martin Luther said, there's 3 conversions to a man: his head, his heart, and his wallet, And so some people, their head and their heart are getting there, but their wallet isn't. Those are a lot of things. The tendency of people is always to revert back to what was most comfortable to them and what they knew. Sometimes even with staff, people on our team are like, hey, I need somebody else, I need somebody else, I need somebody else, I need more money for this, I need another staff for this. And I'm like, no, probably not going to happen. Figure it out. Let's quit doing it. So every year we have a phrase we call reduce and refine. We're constantly reducing and refining. We're getting rid of stuff. We look at our budget and we cut stuff every year. We look at anything that we're doing. We try to get rid of unnecessary even staff people. If we can do this without a staff person, we have a staff ratio of probably 1 to 4. We're about 1/4 the size of other churches our size on the staff, which is great. We spend a lot less money on staff. I like to tell my fellow pastor friends who have, church across town about our size has about 120 staff. And I say, hey, more people, more problems, man. You're always complaining about your team and the problems. I just don't have many problems because I don't have many people, It's a lot of fun. Those are some things. Yes, sir.
So I just want to revisit something. You said you gave 3, basic ways to identify a church is centralized. You said something about who's been pastor or who's a pastor, who needs some need. And I missed that middle one.
The 3 Ds.
Centralization. How church says they centralize.
Please don't let me answer a question you're not asking like I did a minute ago, so interrupt me if I'm wrong. But are you saying when I said centralization, okay, centralization, some people confuse centralization as Sunday gatherings. Yeah. You can be decentralized and have Sunday gatherings, which, by the way, let me just parenthetically insert this here, and then we're going to break. And we're going to come back. There'll be more if you want it. People have deleted the beauty of the corporate gathering because they think that's the reason that we've centralized. And if I get rid of Sunday gathering, I won't centralize. All my microchurch network friends who are they want to decentralize everything. You know what they're doing? They're asking me. They're literally asking me for money to help them keep going in ministry. Or now I'm like, how do you train your people? Or when do they get together and encourage each other? And so, I mean, even the people who have completely decentralized are now adding centrality back in for a little bit. But there wasn't complete decentralization in the church. I mean, you have Paul, he's central to this thing. You have Titus, he's central. It's diminished centralization. When I decelerate, I don't slam on the brakes. I just slow significantly down. And so we have decentralized by diminishing centralization. But people confuse decentralizing as deleting a corporate gathering. And I mean, people were getting together by the thousands at the first church. I mean, Jesus, everything he did was about discipleship. So we can't get rid of him teaching thousands of people on a mountainside is important. If it wasn't valuable, he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have spent every day teaching on the temple steps when he was in Jerusalem, and you have thousands of people gathered there. So we've deleted the beauty of the corporate gathering because we think that's the problem with the church. No, the problem with the church is the centralization of pastoring and the centralization of discipling. And we pastor people through paid pastors. Not at Church Project, we don't. And so you can only pastor as many people as you can pay. I don't think that was ever God's plan. And then we disciple people through programs. And then you got to raise volunteers up to keep running the program. So for us, man, we've decentralized discipleship and we've decentralized pastoring. So we have a common corporate gathering, and then the rest of the time, we're just supporting all the people in house church. Did that answer your question? I like it when I answer a question. I'm sorry I didn't answer your question better earlier. What else we got? Let's do one more question and then we'll break. Yes, sir.
So you've used for microchurch and house church kind of language. Sometimes those kind of overlap. How do you understand the difference between microchurch and house church?
We're better. So I understand it. I'm kidding. Please accept my sarcasm. I think, one, I like the word house church because it's biblical nomenclature. To the church that meets in so-and-so's house. Do I think the word microchurch is wrong? But no, I mean, words are just attempts to understand an idea, right? And so the word microchurch is a new phrase over the last several years that was created to help explain an idea. The idea of microchurch for me is lacking in fullness. There are aspects of it that are beautiful, but it's missing what I believe a proper ecclesiology contains, which is a church of house churches. My microchurch movement friends, and I'm friends with the guys who lead the biggest ones, I tell them, you are, I think, a beautiful evangelistic strategy that could fit into a proper ecclesiology, a full ecclesiology, a church of house churches. There is beauty in it. Y'all know the verse that says, having a form of godliness but denying its power? Y'all remember that verse? I think that principle also applies to church. Microchurch, prevailing model church, traditional church. It has a form of godliness. There is some beauty in it all, but it's denying its power. And so house church for me, the way that we're doing, again, let me express, I do not believe in a biblical form of house church. I believe in a church of house churches. A house church only exists so that a church of house churches can exist. A house church exists so that we can multiply house churches in a community. The goal is never a house church. The goal is a church of house churches. The goal is not house church. People that move away from this and just go sit in a house church, they get insular. They get, 20 years in my house church. You haven't multiplied and shared the gospel with your city. You've lost mission. So what you want to do at some point, what we would all want to do is define actually what is a church. So a church has evangelistic mission. If a church loses that, it dies. A church has, gospel centrality. Some of my microchurch friends will say something like, we got 3 people playing checkers. I call that a microchurch. And I'm like, a checker sounds fun, but it has to have mission. A church has structure. A church has authority. A church has other things. We see it all through Scripture. So Paul would go into a town for a night, share the gospel all night long, find 2 guys like discerning of the Spirit. Oh, you and you, before I leave tomorrow, I'm going to appoint you as elders to oversee this thing. And he would come back. All right, I told you I would leave some gold for later, but I'm giving it all out now. But, Paul would revisit a church always in one of 3 ways. He would go in person, he would go in proxy, or by pen. Paul would go back. He'd plant a church, but he would care about it. So he'd go back in person when he could. He would go by proxy when he couldn't. Sorry, I can't come. I'm in jail, or I'm on the other side of the world. So he would go in person when he could, missionary journeys. He would go by proxy. I'm going to send you Titus, Crescens, Timothy, whoever, Silvanus. I'm going to go by proxy. I can't be there, but I've sent this guy to you. Or he would go by pen. I can't get to you. I'm going to send you a letter, right? And so he would write all the letters to the churches. And so I forgot why I said that, but what was the question?
So microchurch is not, basically house churches that aren't a church of churches, but house church is a church of churches?
Should be. It should be.
So that was my question to you.
It should be. I mean, there's beauty in all of it, but there's incompleteness. I think the completeness gets to the ecclesiology that says we are a church of many house churches. So we are a multiplying movement in our city of distributed pastoral leadership, decentralized from primary place and priest, living in diverse discipleship communities, but still for the sake of the gospel spreading across our city. But for most people, a house church is people who make their own churn their own butter and make their own dresses, and they're living like children of the corn away from society. And so I don't want that, So we're trying, some people told me, they're like, you need to take the name house church off because it means other things to other people. I'm like, let's recapture that beautiful biblical language, but not an isolated, independent, awkward house church. No, a beautiful mission in our city for these 3 things. Hey, y'all are awesome. For the next track session, I'll share more stuff. Just sit closer. We'll have more fun. Thanks for being here for this one. You're awesome. Good questions. Thank you.